in on the red and gold.
What a run by George Kittle!
All right, it is game day, faithful. Evan Giddings alongside Lorenzo Neal with you here on 95.7, the Game for the Kickoff show. Week 15. You know, Lau, I was thinking we're kind of through the dog days of the season, and everything has flown by so fast. And now we're in a position where the 49ers are 10-3. They're the cream of the crop of the entire league. And now they get a chance to prove it against a division rival yet again down in Arizona. What's up, man? How we doing?
Hey, I'm great, man. It's always awesome to come in on Sunday on the road games and talk to you a little X's and O's and talk about them San Francisco 49ers. I mean, who's got it better than those Niners? I mean, they're on the top of the NFC and on top of the NFL. So now it's about no letdowns. It's about, okay, who let the dogs out? Woo, 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 woo. Let's go today. No letdowns. That's what this is about. This is about keep stacking. Keep stacking. This is where you already got your money, you got your chips, brother. You're like, keep stacking that chicken.
Well, and that's exactly what the 49ers are trying to do, because this is a team that in the last 5 weeks has put together another winning streak, and pretty much they've been up, then a little bit of a lull, and now they're back on top of the league, right? You got wins against Seattle, Philadelphia, Seattle actually twice, and Jacksonville since the bye week, and now they get a test down in Glendale against the Arizona Cardinals, a team that they will see in kind of preceding the big game that everyone's looking forward to on Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, but with the 49ers right now, 10-3, Arizona's a team that is 3-10. They're looking to find themselves, hadn't had their quarterback for much of the season, Jonathan Gannon, first-year head coach. They're in a state of rebuild, but this isn't a game, though, that I look at and say, like, you know, early in the year we're talking about, are these trap games? Are these a spot for this team, a spot for that team? But I do think there is somewhat of a test game for the 49ers from this standpoint. It's a game in which you can see the end of the tunnel. You can see the light, but you can't let off the gas pedal because there is still playoff implications as far as the 1 seed is concerned. Philadelphia still has a chance to grab it from you. Dallas, who plays later on this afternoon in Buffalo, has a chance to grab it from you. Yeah. So this is a game where the 49ers have to have their minds right, and they've shown so far that since that bye week, this isn't a team that you can sneak up on and can kind of take advantage of. So I'm looking forward to see how they approach a business-like trip here today in Glendale.
Yeah, and you look at the last time they played Arizona, it was a pretty competitive game. They, I know it's a different quarterback, but Arizona was able to run the ball and get downhill, played here in San Francisco, and made it a game out of it. So now it's just interesting to see what Kyler Murray, how he plays. And he's a guy that the 49ers always had problems with, especially mobile quarterbacks that kind of wear down the defensive front. That's why this game's got to be a fast start. You understand, you talked about the different teams. Dallas is a streak, and you look at Philadelphia, they're in a little lull, but it's a game that you have to go in and say, look, we got to take advantage of this situation, because if you don't, you know what happens. If you let a team like Arizona stick around and let Kyler Murray run around so much and wear your defense out, I'm not afraid about a beating, but you can get guys injured. Guys can get hurt. All those different things that play into effect. So that's why you need to go out here and play fast. Keep this young guy in that pocket. Don't let him get around and be mobile.
Well, and speaking of injuries, I mean, at this point of the season for the 49ers, health is wealth, right? I mean, when they got their full cast, this is a team that has demonstrated they cannot be beaten. They are going to be down a couple of guys this week, though, Lo, and I'm interested to see how they are able to step up, because you're missing your 2 interior guys in the defensive line. Eric Armstead is out with a foot/knee injury. Javon Hargrave is out with a hamstring injury. They're also going to be missing Ross Dwelly, Oren Burks, as well as Elijah Mitchell. Right now, Dre Greenlaw is questionable. Charvarius Ward questionable, probably going to play as well. So, you got guys a little bit banged up across the board, and that's where it's from a standpoint, not necessarily of survive in advance, but if the Niners have their full 100%, roster heading into the postseason or even into a big game like Baltimore next week, this is a team that you find very difficult to believe they can be beaten. So I'm curious to see how they're going to approach it from this point on, the final month or so of the regular season, to get their guys right. And then, but also aim for that 1 seed so you can get a little bit of extra time to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Get that week bye when the number 1 seed. But this is very, very simple. Like, what you're talking about. You look at guys like Seattle last week. I thought they held some of their guys out because they didn't think they're necessarily going to be with the Niners. They knew they probably wasn't going to win that game. They wanted to compete. If they start to win, they would go for it. But now you're in a situation, you look at Seattle. I know as I digress, I'm going somewhere with this. But now you look at Seattle. Seattle's going to play hard today. This is their last hurrah. This is it. So I think all hands on deck for Seattle. They They held guys out, saying, okay, you're going to play a Niner team, but now you got Philadelphia teams that got to fly two time zones to fly over here and play the Seattle Seahawks, a team that is dangerous, that can compete, and now you're going to be playing Seattle with the 12th man, and so I think you're in a tough situation if you're Philadelphia playing Seattle. I think the Niners understand, and that's why, as I digress to go back to the Niners to answer your question, that's why the Niners Hargrave, you got the big, the different guys on the defensive front that's saying they're going to be out and not going to play this week, or because they understand what's next week. You talk about having Hargrave out, if Greenlaw's not playing and certain these guys aren't playing, you still think this Niner team is good enough to win. Now, next week, if you don't have, Hargrave, if you don't have, Armstead, if you don't have Greenlaw, that's going to be a harder team to beat Baltimore. So they understand this week, let's try to get guys limited pitch count, let a lot of the backups play, because next week, that is going to be a showdown. The Baltimore Ravens are going to come in here, and that's going to be a black and blue game. The Niners understand that you can't overlook the Arizona Cardinals, and that's why we're going to have to focus in and talk about this trap game. No letdowns. You got to win this game, because next week you're going to have all hands on deck if you want to beat this Baltimore Ravens team. Yeah, and that's why from the trap or test standpoint, I think that this week in this game is one that tests the 49ers' depth, right? To see how deep they are. Right. And so you're going to have guys that are stepping up. You're potentially down to your third or fourth linebacker, of course, alongside Fred Warner, but you might be down to your third or fourth interior tackle on the defensive side of the ball. Nick Bosa and Chase Young are going to need some help from guys. Javon Kinlaw is going to have to step up. Guys like Cleveland Ferrell, Kerry Hyder, guys that are going to need to play up to par against an Arizona Cardinals team that can be had and certainly has not played very well this season, but also has a win earlier in the year against a team like Dallas that they caught them at the right time in Arizona. So you never want to let that sort of thing happen or sneak up on you. And I'm curious how 49ers fans are feeling about this game. 888-957-9570 is the number. Also the number for the Comcast Business text line. Text in how you feeling about the Niners. They're on top of the world. Not necessarily are you worried about this game, but where are you at with the 49ers season and how far you believe that this team can go? What is your expectation from here on out for the 49ers? Also, shout out to the YouTube chat, seeing everyone pile in. That is Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings here on the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. I mean, Lo, it's like where... You mentioned a good point. You talked about, hey, Arizona's been here before. They beat the Dallas Cowboys. When everyone's talking about Dallas was 3-0 at the time, and they were like, okay, the Cowboys, Arizona, everyone talked about a layup. Arizona said not so fast. Mm-hmm. So now you look at fast forward. If Arizona was playing against, let's say they were playing against Detroit today, or let's say they were playing against, the Steelers or the Titans, or maybe it's different. Or they're playing against the Chargers. They're like, okay, we're playing the Chargers. They're playing against the Niners. If you're in Arizona, if you're on a bad team, you're thinking now, everyone in the country is going to be watching us because we're getting ready to play the number one team supposed to be in the NFL. So you're Arizona, you're Kyler Murray, you're those guys in that team. This is to show the world that we're not that far off. So I think that Kyle Shanahan is preaching to this guys that, guys, don't go in here and underestimate these guys. We know what happened to us 3 years ago. Arizona swept us. We were winning that game, and they ended up beating us, and we beat us at home and on the road. So this is that game where Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff, hopefully this week he pushed his coaches. Mentally, not necessarily physically, because the guys are already physical. You already played enough. You're beat up. Your body's broken down. It's about the mental aspect of practice this week. How mentally are they prepared? How many mentally? That's what this is about, because Arizona is looking at this and saying, okay, are we going to catch a giant? Are we going to catch a sleeping giant? So they're looking forward to this game to saying they know this is an opportunity that I got to showcase my ability, because other teams are going to, I might not be on this team because they're cleaning house in Arizona. So this is an opportunity for guys to showcase their talent. So this is about Kyle Shanahan, his ability to coach his coaches this week, mentally, physically, to get those guys pushing their players, not physically, but mentally.
And shout out to the 925, who's excited for Brock's return to Arizona. A kid from Glendale. And, of course, that was one of the storylines last year before Brock unfortunately went down in the NFC Championship. Could he get back to the place in which he was from in Glendale for the Super Bowl? Now, this year it's in Las Vegas, but the 49ers do have aspirations to return to the biggest game. So, and going back to that first meeting between these two teams, I know Josh Dobbs was the quarterback, and he was also the quarterback that went and beat Dallas before he ended up in Minnesota. But that was a game in which you saw Christian McCaffrey score 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
Brock Purdy, I think, completed 18 passes in a row or somewhere along those lines. I mean, they just laid down the law the first time they played the Cardinals. But now you go into their building, State Farm Stadium, and I don't know if there's any nerves about going back and playing, where you're from. But I have to imagine Brock Purdy's feeling pretty excited about playing in front of a couple hundred people.
Oh, of course, at least a couple hundred. I saw you talking
of his family members.
Family, no question. At least I think that he's going to have not just family members and friends. Think about this guy's not too far removed from high school and the people in that community. So I think it's going to be more than that. I think you got all these guys on his football team. Hey, buddy, hey, what's up, Brock? We're coming to watch you. So this is a great opportunity for the young fella. He's going back there. So I think you'll have some. I think I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna take that over. Hey, you know what? I just want to tell you, I'm sorry, man. I looked at my text. I forgot about that sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit, baby. I'm sorry about that, baby. You're giving me the look over here. No wonder you're mad at me. I went down. I'm sorry about that as I digress, people. I get here, right? And I'm like, man, I see my man come out, a producer, Mickey D's. I said, Mickey D's is right around the corner. I said, you know what? I said, let me shoot over there. I forgot my key card. Let me get your key card. And I asked E, I'm like, Ev, we on something? No. Evan, you sure, man? Let me get you. I got you. This is 3. I asked him 3, not once, not twice, but 3. No, even 4 times. He doesn't tell me, so I'm hurrying up. Only got 20 minutes. I'm going to give me some flapjacks. So I'm running over there. I grab my order. Boom. Come back. Scarf it down. And then I look right now at my phone, get ready to go to IG Live. Hey, go ahead and I'll get you back later. Bro, I'm sorry, buddy.
No, look, you laid it down too. That's 100% my fault because, look, you had me feeling good about myself. We come in here early.
I know.
We're talking like, hey, man, you look like you're coming up a little bit, doing a little bit of lifting, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, man. I've been trying, man. I've been trying. You go, hey, I'm going to Mickey D's. You need some? I said, well, I mean, you just made me feel good about my physique. Do I really need to pile on with a sausage, egg, and cheese?
Of course so, bro.
Man, but then I thought about it now. I want. It's all good, Lo. You had me feeling juice, man.
Okay, that's what. So if I wouldn't have had that conversation with you earlier, you'd have been like, oh yeah, grab me this.
Well, because Lo, I mean, you walk in here looking like you just stepped off a football field. So I'm like, okay, well, he's talking about me. I'm on the come up. Like,
you look good, man.
I appreciate it.
But it's Sunday. You got to have a cheat day in your life, baby.
I know.
Little sausage, egg, and biscuits wasn't going to hurt anything. My goodness, bro. My goodness. Okay. Back to the nature.
Not everyone can rest on the Sabbath, man. Not everyone can rest on the Sabbath. That is Lo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings. This is the Kickoff Show. We're having some fun before the 49ers take on the Arizona Cardinals. 105 kick. We're taking you up to it on 95.7 The Game as we do every single Sunday. Lowe's with Larry Kruger, road games. He'll be here in studio with us, and we appreciate you tuning in. 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to text in, if you want to call in, chime in on the YouTube chat. And this is like kind of what we're talking about here, right, is Brock going back to Arizona, but the 49ers overall, and I think where people are at, I was texting a couple of my buddies yesterday, Lo, big 49ers fans.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the excitement for the game or the rest of the games, but just the excitement for where the team is at. And this was something we were kicking around before the show, before you started throwing props my way, is are we in a position now for where the 49ers are truly in a Super Bowl or bust situation? Because that's the way that I think a lot of fans are feeling is this team is great. They're, on historic paces. They got a plus 170 point differential. They're the cream of the crop. They look like they can be anybody at any time, any place. But will they be able to get it done? And that's a question that, of course, they won't be able to answer for quite some time. But I wonder if that's really where fans are at right now with the Niners.
No question. This is a team right now, barring injuries, it's a team the Super Bowl to lose. They had that little bump in the road. You lost Debo, and it goes to show you that Brock flourishes and plays at a very, very high level when he has his whole accoutrement of players. Mm-hmm. When you got arguably the best tackle in the league, you know who that is, big 7-1. When he's eating up people and you have Debo and you have all your weapons and you have time to throw the ball, this team is hard to beat. And so I think that with the statement that you're making, yes, it's Super Bowl or bust. I think barring injuries, now if you lost, Fred Warner, if you lost Debo, if you lost like an Ayuk or a Kittle, or, if you lost Big 71, if you lost him for extended time, it's hard to win without that tackle because what that guy does for the other offensive linemen is unparamount. I mean, how he can block sometime 2 and 3 guys and pull out at 35 years old, 33, whatever he is, and pull out and, Trenton, the way he can still pull and run down the field and eat people up. He is a road grader. So if you lost some of those key integral guys, you're not winning the Super Bowl. But if the team that they have today, and if it's healthy, it's their Super Bowl to lose. No question. It's Super Bowl bust.
And that's the way I feel too. It's look, they have just about everything at this point that you could want from a team. And look, they are the best team in football, and I think that's part of it too for me, Lo. Like, I have a hard time labeling seasons as Super Bowl or bust, especially in the NFL. Like, you know, things could happen that just goes off the rails. Maybe there's a punt block, a missed kick. Things happen to great teams that unfortunately end their seasons, especially in a one-and-done playoff situation. But the 49ers right now, to me, the combination of how dominant they've looked, and they have the best resume in football, along with where the rest of the NFL is at, where the rest of the NFC and the AFC is at, I do believe that right now you can make a case that the 49ers are one, and then maybe there's 3 or 4 teams that you could put at number 2. And that's, to me, the difference between them right now. And even though they're playing the Cardinals this week, I think they're able to take care of business, and we'll get into all the X's and O's in just a little bit. But as far as where the 49ers have positioned themselves around the NFL, there's no one that I believe could go into Levi's or even on a neutral site field and be able to impose their will on the 49ers. The 49ers, to me, dictate the tempo of any game they play when they got their guys, to your point.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be interesting next week, because I think when you look at a team that likes to run the ball, and that's the Ravens, and I know we don't want to necessarily look ahead, but that's a team that's physical. That's a team that's going to make the 49ers have to cover every blade of grass, and they got to play in the trenches, play in their lanes, because they're going to run the ball. They're going to try to run the ball to be able to get Lamar Jackson going. So that's going to be a great matchup. I don't want to get ahead of schedule, but when you think about right now in NFC, I think that if you think about the NFC is probably the toughest in the NFL. I think right now in the NFC. So can they get by Dallas again? Can they get by Philadelphia again? So those are the questions that you would have to ask. And they're healthy and you have number 1 seed and you're playing at home. Yes, to go on the road to say I'm going to go win in Dallas, you know, the way that Dallas is playing, let's give them some credit. The Dallas defense has been playing lights out. They've been playing a lot better. You got to realize since Dak's lost to the Niners, they really picked it up. Dak Prescott is playing well. The Cowboys is playing some good football. So I think that, yes, they are the best team in the NFL. They're the best team in the NFC, but you got to make sure you stay on track.
Well, yeah, and it's not to say that a team like Dallas or Philadelphia couldn't test the Niners, but that's another reason why I think there is importance placed on this game that they need to win, because you want that 1 seed. You want to give yourself the best chance possible to secure a position in the Super Bowl. And it's not necessarily like, I don't know how you look at this, Lo. Do you feel like the bye is more important than home field through the playoffs? Because the Niners have already shown they could go into Philly and kick the Eagles' ass. Now, they defended home field against the Dallas Cowboys, but the Cowboys have quietly been unbeaten at home. I mean, they look like a different team at Jerry World when they have to exit. So, I mean, do you look at health or the 1 seed being the home field security? Do you think, like, which of those do you feel like is more important? Because to me, I am starting to trend towards having home field throughout the entire postseason.
You want home field. You want home field. It's just a different atmosphere. To go out there and travel to the NFC Championship on the road, to go travel, there's a lot of distractions. When you're home, you're in your same bed, you're in your same routine. You know that the game is home. You know where you're going to go and eat. You already know what you're doing. On the road, you're stuck in hotels. You got to wait around for the game. I think it's just different. You got the whole week leading up there. You don't got to leave a day or two early. If they go to Dallas, they're going to leave 2 days early. Going to get there on Friday, going through the regiment, still standing and waiting for the buses to pick you up. You know, but one night in, one night out, it's okay. But you think about it. Being home is a huge difference. Knowing your fans, knowing where to go, knowing where your locker room is, knowing what you got to do, how to drive to the stadium. Don't have to worry about anyone stopping you. Don't have to drive your own car. It's just a different feel. I think home field with the Niner faithful and all the things that are surrounding that, I think home field is paramount for this Niners. They will be it's still going to be a challenge, but you should go to the Super Bowl and be very, very dominant. And I think if you have home field, I think the 49ers is a team to beat.
For the 925, I'm hoping that this game is what seals Brock's MVP. Now, that's a discussion I think we can get into for sure. To me, it's hard to gauge it based on this week, but you said something I thought was interesting about not necessarily looking ahead, but the Ravens game being one that, you know, based on what they have left on the schedule, you got Washington after, and then the Rams, which could be a sneaky tough game, but you expect them to go and win.
Tough. It's home right?
But yes,
Rams are here, so
yes,
you're good.
Yeah. So, but I think that in reference to this game, one thing that has me feeling a type of way about next week, which is going to be on Christmas, Monday Night Football, whole world's going to be watching, is this: Kyler Murray is a very unique talent. Now, I know he might be, according to some, a bit of an underachiever through his career so far, number 1 overall pick, but compared to what you have to face next week, I do think the fact that Kyler Murray is a dual-threat quarterback, and he's had some success against the Niners in the past, to me, this is a great, again, test game for how the 49ers defense, which is going to be missing 2 D linemen up front, going to be missing its third linebacker, might be missing Dre Greenlaw, TBD on that. Inactives will come out about an hour before kick. But how will you be able to contain the likes of Kyler Murray? Because in comparison to someone like Jalen Hurts, who is absolutely a dual-threat quarterback, I think Kyler Murray is more of a run-first guy than pass-first compared to Hurts. So how will the Niners, who are playing a little bit depleted up front, be able to contain a guy like that before they get to face the evolved form in Lamar Jackson next week?
Well, I think it's a very, very, it's simple but yet complex. You got to rush as a unit. And when I say when you're playing quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and like Kyler Murray, you rush as a unit. The whole defensive unit, you push back the pile to collect them. No one gets out of lane. No one gets out of assignment. You push the pile back evenly. So now you keep him in that pocket and don't let him escape. If you have guys outside of the lanes and now, bam, now you can run through the tackle gap. Boom, if the nose is too far upfield, now there's gaps outside there. So you have to pressure rush and press rush together and push the pocket, in his lap, and keep him in that phone booth. That's how you keep a Kyler Murray, and that's how you keep a Lamar Jackson in the pocket. When you get them outside the pocket, or if you have a speed rusher that hurry up and gets upfield, now where he gets upfield, where the tackle and him was running backfield, now there's a lane, and now they're taking off, and they're picking up 10 yards at minimum. So you have to rush smart. When you don't have necessarily all your guys, you keep them in the pocket, and the secondary has to cover, and you got to bat down some balls.
Yeah, and look, I think Kyler Murray is also a player that, and the Cardinals do have a couple of questions as far as injuries are concerned, specifically at the wide receiver position. Marquise Brown, questionable, was limited practice on Friday, and also look at Jeff Swaim, tight end. The only guy that's listed as out right now for the Cardinals is Bobby Price, and a defensive back who hasn't played much. So, they are at relative full strength. Not to say that means the Cardinals are a team that you should necessarily be worried about, walking away with a win here today. But the 49ers, to me, are in a position to where if they just take care of business, and this is where it comes back to the quarterback for me, Lo, because Brock Purdy is as buttoned up of a quarterback at his age as I've seen in a long time. And I do feel like even though he's a little bit unsuspecting, he's got the high school face, he's going back home, he's playing in front of the home crowd, and he's from Arizona, to me, he does sort of embody the business-like attitude that the 49ers have had this season. And that, to me, has been an understated part about his impact on this team. You always need your quarterback to set the tone, even if he might not be your highest paid player, even if he's your lowest paid player like Purdy is.
Right,
I do think that they follow him from that standpoint of he has not overlooked any opponent this year. He's not always played his best, but he hasn't overlooked an opponent, and I do expect that to continue today.
What I love about Purdy and some of those acclimates you're talking about is his demeanor. I love that he's not wavered and he's not moved. Even when he's in the storm, he knows who's in control. And because of his beliefs and his spiritual beliefs and his spirituality and just who he is, he understands football is just a game. It's a tool. And he plays it like that. If you watch him, on the field, he gets fired up and there's emotions. But after the game, watch the way and the things that he carries himself. He understands that this world that we live in, they're going to praise him and they're going to praise him, and he know they're going to tear him down, and he know they're going to rip you. So all he does is he stays focused. What you're talking about, that's why McCaffrey calls him assassin. That's why you have, Trent talking about it. This guy should be MVP. He's an elite quarterback. Why? Because he's not a guy that's going to be up and down. He's a guy that you know that you're going to have consistency out of. And I think that's why Brock Purdy, like you're talking about, the leader and the fortitude that he has, that's why this team, to me, is so successful, because your quarterback, he doesn't get caught up in everything else around him and everything that's going around. He's like, I'm going to be focused. I know that I have a job to do. This is my job. This is not my life. This is not who I am. But I'm going to tell you what, my job I'm invested in. And he's invested in this job, and he knows what it takes. Those are the things you're talking about that you just can't teach. And that's what keeps this young man so grounded, is his heart and his belief in himself.
And that, combined with the fact that he's north of 70% completion, that's number one in the league. leading the league as far as touchdown rate. He's thrown 25 to 7 picks this year, leading the league with a 116.9 quarterback rating, 74.6 QBR. I mean, you can just go down the list of things that he has done as far as efficiency is concerned this season. But at the end of the day, and this is one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed watching him is, I don't know about you, Lo, I want my quarterback to be boring. And I don't mean that as far as what they do on the field.
No, I get it.
But I want my quarterback to be steady Eddie. I want him to be someone that is not riding the tidal wave, but is instead kind of just letting everything go with the flow. I want my quarterback to sit up there in the podium and deflect. I want him to give all the praise to I want him to be boring. And Brock Purdy, in the best kind of way, has been the most boring quarterback of the season. Meanwhile, he's out there balling out to a 10-3 record.
You're absolutely right, and that's what makes him unique, and that's what makes him, to me, he's my MVP. I think that Christian McCaffrey could get MVP. I think, Tyreek could be MVP, and I think that Brock Purdy could be MVP. So when you think about what he's doing and the way in which he does it, I couldn't agree with you more. The way he carries himself, he gives praise to other guys. He's never talking about himself, never saying, "Oh, I'm the reason," or "Oh, I saw this," and he's like, "Look, I got great talent around me. These guys know how to get open. I believe in those guys, and they believe in me. I know where they're going to be. I let the ball go, and those guys make plays." He gives those guys the praise, and they know behind there. And what do they do in return? Listen, every man, tell me what guy haven't gave him praise, because he's never calling anyone out. He's always giving them the praise, and in return, they're giving him the praise.
Yeah, and that's why, the 49ers have so many weapons, but, I think Brock Purdy is the most important guy, not just because of the position that he plays, but because of the type of tone that he's able to set and the amount of respect that he demands in that locker room.
When you say that, when you say, okay, so when McFadden, not McFadden, but when Run DMC when he's kind of injured, when you watch the way that McCaffrey plays and what he brings to the table, and when you see it, and Brock is steady, Eddie. Brock is going to go out, even when he plays bad, he's not going to give you excuses. He's going to say, "I got to do better." But when you watch McCaffrey play, and when McCaffrey's healthy and he's there, why can you not make that same thing that he should be MVP? When you think about when Brock was injured, or not when Brock, but when the guys are hurt, guys are down, could he go out and do it? You watch Buffalo, what Josh Allen has to do. Can he do that with a consistent basis? So I think that's the question. I think that he could be in that MVP. I understand. I think Brock is persistent in what he is, efficiency rating, all those things off the Richter. But how can you not say that McCaffrey can be MVP of this league?
I want to get into that on the other side, because I think that's a really interesting conversation, which we can use to branch out also to where we're at with the rest of the league, stacking the NFC to the AFC. And, of course, everyone is being compared to the San Francisco 49ers, who kick off at 1:05 at State Farm Stadium against the Arizona Cardinals, 10-3 versus 3-10. It is Week 15 of the NFL. This is the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wrong, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED. Visit habaslaw.com. That's Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings. We're taking your texts, your calls. 888-957-9570 is the number. Where are you at with the 49ers? Where do you see them in reference to the rest of the league? And what are you hoping to see today, in which, again, a game that the Niners are down 2 of their defensive linemen, down a linebacker, a little bit banged up. What do you expect to see from them today? We'll have that coming up as we take you towards kickoff right here on 95.7 The Game.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising. After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
It wasn't the internet, and it wasn't the warehouse club.
But?
It was video only. They had better deals on the Samsung, LG, and the Sony TVs that got the highest scores.
Better than online and at the club?
I know. Video only beat them all. And now we can afford an even better model for the same price. My research really paid off.
If we buy it video only.
Exactly. Otherwise, we'll be sorry.
At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves, but you will find the best deals on top-rated TVs, soundbars, and monitors. Shop around. Just make sure you visit Video Only, because if you don't,
you'll be sorry.
In Mountain View, San Mateo, Union City, Dublin, and San Rafael. Video Only.
Get in where you fit in. AC Transit wants you to drive the East Bay. Take the wheel of your career and level up. No driving experience required. Paid training is provided. New bus operators are eligible for a $2,000 bonus. Secure the bag. Apply today at AC Transit.
Enter to win a $100 gift card to Pacific Catch and experience a celebration, including seasonal shellfish, specials like Dungeness crab, and creamy clam chowder, guaranteed to give you those warm winter vibes. For your chance to win, visit the contest page at 957thegame.com.
Discover, this is Daniela.
Hi, it's Jennifer Coolidge. I just want to thank you for making me feel so special. I earned cash back on debit for my dinner party groceries.
That's great, but with Discover Cashback Debit, we give everyone cash back on everyday purchases. Anything else I can help you with?
Do you like asparagus and mushroom sorbet? I've got leftovers.
Introducing Discover Cashback Debit, a checking account with cash back. It pays to Discover. Eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashback debit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
Don't miss new deals every day during Lowe's 25 Days of Deals. Get up to 50% off select tools and accessories. Plus, bring home a Werner 4-foot fiberglass.
That's 800-330-2929. 800-330-2929.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
That is Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings. We are taking you up until 49ers Cardinals 105 kick, State Farm Stadium, Week 15 of the NFL. And Lo, before the break, we were kind of discussing this concept of importance and dominance, because with the 49ers, they got so many guys to choose from. I mean, It's just pick your poison. Death by a 1,000 machete cuts, it feels like, with this team. But you brought up Christian McCaffrey, and I want to use that to get into the conversation about Brock Purdy and the roles between them. Because to me, and this is how I look at it. Christian McCaffrey, if you're trying to make a fire, he's the match. He's the guy that starts the flame.
Sure.
Brock Purdy, to me, is the gasoline. Once the fire's there,
yeah,
you can pour Brock Purdy on top of it, and it just becomes consuming.
I like that.
But Christian McCaffrey, to your point earlier, and that's why I think if you're going to throw him in an MVP conversation, he deserves to be there because he's the one that you have to start with.
Wow, that's a great analogy. I've never heard it like that. He's the match, he's the start of the fire, and then he's the gasoline. Haven't heard that, but you're absolutely right. You think about go back a couple weeks to Philadelphia. We're in here watching this game, and you guys are like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's going on? 3 and out. And I said, because we talked about on the show. I said, get McCaffrey involved often and early. Once they got him involved, he lighted the fire and the gasoline started rolling. You have to, and that's the thing I think about Purdy. He's a guy that's, it's a great complimentary that once you start getting going, then he can serve everything. But you need to make sure, when you have good service, you got him, he will serve everyone up. But you got to make sure that the chefs got the food and then you let him serve. And that's Kyle Shanahan. He makes sure you serve him up and let this guy serve the food because he can do it like no other. I love the way the quarterback plays, but McCaffrey to me, man, is just, he's so electrifying. He brings so many different things. He holds linebackers. He holds safeties. He makes your offense go too. So I just think that he should be in that. And hell, I'm tired of seeing quarterbacks every year as a quarterback MVP. Give it to McCaffrey.
Well, so like if we're looking at non-quarterbacks, I think that it's probably between McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill, right? I mean, those are the two guys that do the most for their teams.
No question. But Tyreek Hill, he's been injured. He's sitting out this game too. Yeah. So you have 2 weeks where
they're still running it up on the
they are. And you watch what Raheem Mostert is doing. He's just tearing it up for the Dolphins. But yeah, I think so. But I think that if you are going to give it to a quarterback, I think if it's predicated on wins and losses, then you got to look at Brock. And if it's not, I think tonight, if the Buffalo Bills beat, the Dallas Cowboys, I think you got to throw, Josh Allen, what he's been able to do with that team, and his defense hasn't been as good. So it's just going to be interesting perspective. But yeah, without a doubt, Brock Purdy should be in this conversation. And if he does, and if he gets it, it wouldn't surprise me.
Pierce Evans on YouTube, been saying this for weeks. CMC is the MVP of the team. On the Comcast business text line from the 925, McCaffrey's the ceiling raiser, but the floor is started by the person second to touch the ball every single play, and that's Purdy. Shout out to Buzz. I think it's really just however you want to slice it, because when Brock Purdy has it rolling, this offense makes every single defense have to guess. Like, this was something that, week 5 when they just absolutely demolished Dallas, I know you were covering that game at Levi's. I was down in the locker room and was talking to a couple of the Cowboys players, and they had so many questions, and that was the frustration about it, because they were forced to choose, it felt like, defensively, from hearing them talk. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, big boys in this league, had to choose whether they wanted to focus on potentially stopping McCaffrey or if they were going to try and get to the quarterback to try and stop Brock. When you have guys that are playing at the elite level, that both of those two players are. McCaffrey is undoubtedly the best running back in football right now. Brock Purdy is playing maybe like the best quarterback in football. Well, then you kind of just have to pick your poison. And that's why I think it's so hard to choose for me. Yeah. I would lean to the quarterback because that's the way the modern game is played. But if you walked in here and said, CMC's my MVP, I wouldn't be able to tell you you're wrong.
What do you think those two have in common? When you do compare and contrast Brock Purdy and CMC, tell me the things you like about the common and non-common. And because I got one, I'm gonna see if you're gonna hit it.
Well, number one, I think their style of leadership to me is very similar, and I think McCaffrey is a guy that has a little more understanding just because he's been in the league for longer. Sure. He's been in a place that hasn't been as successful, and so he understands the special group that is here in San Francisco. But Brock Purdy, to me, is like I think they both amplify their surroundings, and when you put them together, I mean, you got like Shaq and Kobe. Like it's really hard for me, I think, to choose which guy's playing better, because McCaffrey could go for $150 and 4 touchdowns today, like he did in week 4. Brock Purdy could also throw for 4 touchdowns. And that is, to me, why teams are so afraid of facing the 49ers, because you don't know which guy's going to give it to you on a given day.
Right. You tell me, I'm just going to play a game, and you kind of go with this, and hopefully you can see it, because it's unfair, but it's just how life is. When you watch track and field and you watch the 100-yard dash, do you usually think a white guy's going to win or a black guy's going to win it? You know, it's hard, you know, but because we can say this, but it's not a racist thing. It's just, man, usually you watch black guys run and you think, okay, so McCaffrey's.
You feel like they're both underrated?
They're both underrated, but I think that what it is, they both have that chip and that bravado on their shoulders because no one gives them a chance. It's brothers like, no, that boy ain't gonna outrun me. It's funny because he's waving by because guys like, oh, I'll chase that white boy down. That's just how brothers, and it's not, and so people that don't get sports, oh, that's racist. People that get sports, you're like, dude, that white boy can play. Oh, you see a dude can dance. White man, that brother, he danced like a brother. Why? But it's funny. See, you get it. But people that don't get it, they don't understand it. So McCaffrey's here like, all right, boys, I'm going to show y'all. And they looking at McCaffrey like, and trust me, you're around guys and like, that white boy tough. That's what they say. And it's not. And it's no disrespect. So I think when you see McCaffrey and you watch the way that he plays and the energy and stuff he plays with, he understands because he's been raised around. He's been with all these guys. So he understands, hey, this is what people believe. This is what they think, but they know who I am. So they just give him, that's what they tip the hat. Like, man, you tough. So he's out here doing it and doing when's the last time you seen a white running back as MVP? I mean, be honest, but it's hard to because
John Riggins.
Yeah, but people don't. But people can't. You got to realize as a white, you can't talk like that because people are just think, oh, no. This is awesome. This is uncharted waters, and you see a guy that plays with the chip on his shoulder, that does everything. He can run, he can catch, he plays like a LaDainian Tomlinson, like a Marshall Faulk. He's that type of back, and when he does all these things and he does it just as good as everyone, it makes you say, wow. So that's why when I look at what he's doing and what he's accomplishing, because it's not the norm, I think he should be MVP. So that's just me and my perspective. And you know what? People hope they understand what I'm trying to say, because what he's doing is unbelievable. He's running over guys. He's running through guys. He's outrunning guys. He's making guys miss a hole. He's beating them on man-to-man coverage. He's doing something that backs can't do collectively, and that's why you have so many different backs. He's a 4-down, 3-down back. He can do it all. He can pass block. He can catch. He can run. He can run with power. He can run with finesse. When you look at this guy, this fire starter that you talked about, I think he's fire. I think he's gas. I think he's everything. So that's why he's my MVP.
And look, and I can't refute that. Like, if you touched on one thing I thought was really interesting about McCaffrey and the fact that he grew up in a professional household. That is something that it immediately just kind of draws my, because like,
he's been around it his whole life.
But we always compare him, or at least I've heard him compared on this station, to someone like Stephen Curry in the way that the gravity is around them, right? Everyone has to know where they are at all times, and if you lose him, he's going to kill you. But they also have that relationship with their parents who played professionally, but weren't always the best at their positions. Like Del Curry was a great shooter, sixth-man starter at points. Ed McCaffrey, part of a Super Bowl winning team, but was never a true number one. But Christian McCaffrey is a guy, I think that he understands the league inside and out, not just, of course, how to play. I mean, he's a hell of a ball player, but he understands the way to carry yourself, locker room dynamics, the chemistry, and that is, I think, and the more that I think about it, honestly, one of the parts about the 49ers that makes them unique to others is a guy like McCaffrey has that already innate understanding of where we need to be as a group, not just as an individual.
And that's why teams and players, and that's why I think that he and Brock are a lot alike, because they're overachievers. They're the underdogs. They're not supposed to be doing this. Brock Purdy, not drafted, the last man, Mr. Irrelevant, comes in, takes the number one pick over, takes Trey Lance's position. You go in here, he beats out Jimmy G. Think about what he's been able to accomplish as an underdog, and now everyone's throwing dirt on him. Oh, he's a system quarterback. Can't get it done. Look at his proficiency. So all he does is say, I know this is a game, but I'm going to stay focused and do the best I can. So think about what he's accomplished. So that's why he's my MVP too, is because he's understands all the odds and everything that's stacked against him, And look what he still does in the midst of the storm, because the media, oh, he's just a system. Oh, he can't do this. Oh, he can't do that. Oh, look when these guys are out. Look at what happened. But now look how he just keeps going. And all these other quarterbacks, the Joshes, the Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, all these guys drafted first round. All these guys get the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Here it is, Mr. Irrelevant. And all I do is win, 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 no matter what.
And that's the uptick from Lorenzo Neal. Evan Giddings on the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. Now you really got the gears churning low. Because yes. I'm thinking here, and to my recollection, it's only happened one time. Co-MVPs. 2004, Peyton Manning and Steve McNair, I think.
Yeah, Stevie, buddy.
And it will never happen. But you think we got co-MVPs on the 49ers?
Wow.
Like Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey?
Wow.
I don't think the voters would ever go for it. But in a way, you got me looking at this now like it's difficult for me to separate them because they're so innately tied. One game, one's more important than the other. The other game, the guy does this, he does that. But they might just be the first time to convince me, obviously based on the rest of the season, but I'm trending towards they would both be my MVP.
And that's where I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go on a limb and say the MVP of the National Football League is on the 49ers. I will say that. I really believe if they continue both these guys' success that they're having, the MVP in the National Football League is on the San Francisco 49ers team. It's one of those two guys, undoubtedly, because what McCaffrey and what Brock has done is unprecedented. You think about what McCaffrey did as far as those touchdown streaks, what he scored 19 in the first time, broke a record or tied a record during there.
Yeah, since 1960.
So you think about what he
guys
did.
Guys were wearing leather helmets last time.
Exactly. So I think that the MVP will be on the 49ers team, barring injuries, and they continue to do what they do.
Well, the only other guy that right now is, at least in terms of the betting odds, is right up there with Brock Purdy is Dak Prescott. And you referenced the game later on today, same time slot and a half hour later, but the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills.
Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, if he didn't lose the MVP, if he lost the MVP because of what Brock Purdy did to him when he came to San Francisco, he cannot get the MVP. And now, here's the deal. If you took that game away, Dak Prescott, he would be the MVP. You watch what he's been doing, you watch the way Dallas is scoring, and you watch the way he's running and doing all those different things, you would say Dak Prescott MVP. But you can't. Now, you cannot give Dak Prescott the MVP is solely because of what Brock Purdy and what the 49ers did to him, so that won't work. So I understand that you can talk about him in that conversation. No question. You have to. You have to acknowledge what Dak Prescott is. He's on fire. He's lighting it up. He's throwing the ball over the field. He is playing absolutely amazing. He showed what he did last week against Jalen Hurts and that group. Dak Prescott is playing great football, but the NFL cannot give him the MVP over Brock Purdy. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. And I hope they don't do that.
Well, it's interesting because, the 49ers, I think people have throughout the year labeled them kind of like, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but front runners from the sense that when the script goes their way, they're unbeatable. But the Dallas Cowboys have been more of the just definition of front runners this year from the perspective of when they've played teams that have been challenges, they have generally struggled. Now, they picked up their first big win, their marquee win in the season against the Eagles last week. But I'm looking at a loss to Philly. Of course, the thumping by the 49ers. A loss even to the Cardinals earlier this year. You go up and down their schedule, and their wins against plus 500 teams are really tough to come by. Meanwhile, the 49ers, though they have been front-running in the sense that when they get leads, they don't give them up, I can go down the list of Jacksonville, Dallas, Philadelphia. Like, there are teams that are positioning themselves to make a deep potential postseason run that the Niners have laid waste to. So even though the Dallas Cowboys right now have a plus 188 point differential that's better than the 49ers plus 175, I don't look at them in that same light, as right now there's three teams in the NFC that are 10-3, but there's a difference between where the Niners are and then, to me, where the Cowboys and the Eagles are.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but you could say that out of those teams, Minnesota, the team that they lost to, Minnesota's probably not going to get in the playoffs.
That's true.
Don't know what, is Joey Flacco what is Joey going to do? But you didn't lose to Joey Flacco. You lost to another backup.
You lost to P.J. Walker.
You lost to P.J. Walker, so he's not that good. Let's be so.
Shout out Temple.
Shout out Temple. There you go. So and then you lost to a team in the Bengals that hadn't won a game, and you lost at home, and the Bengals wasn't really established yet. So when you look at their losses, that's why I think that hurts the Niners, and it kind of hurt Purdy early for the MVP, and I think that he's put that in his back pocket now and put that's behind the team and the voters. So when you think about who they lost to, they didn't lose to necessarily great teams either.
Yeah, the Bengals game is to me one that is, I mean, they got kicked in the rear end, but that's a game with Joe Burrow that those games are going to happen when a great quarterback has a great game.
Agreed.
But I also wonder how we weigh those learning experiences, right? Because look, Dallas lost to the 49ers 42-10, I think it was, in week 5.
Yeah.
That game is eons ago, of course, across an NFL schedule. Philadelphia, it's more recent,
right,
but the Niners went in there and lambasted them also.
They did.
The 49ers' 3-game losing streak is, 2 months in the past. I wonder how all three of those teams, as we look to the NFC and stack things up, how they learn from those experiences, because right now I've seen the 49ers be able to look more like the team that had the 5-game win streak at the beginning of the year and the 5-game win streak that they're currently on. And maybe just chalk that 3-game skid up to injuries. I don't know. I personally think also Brock Purdy was going through some growing pains. But do we look at Dallas as a different team than week 5? Do we look at Philly come playoff time as a different team than week 13? That's how I wonder, and I think could be the difference, is how much those teams took from their lumps.
Dallas is different.
And able to apply it.
Dallas is different. I think Philadelphia, if you watch them this year, Philadelphia squeaked by some games this year. Philadelphia has been in some tight games. Their defense hasn't been consistent the whole year, in my opinion. Watching them play, you watch they had to come back and make some wins, and this season, I think Dallas has changed. Dallas has gotten a lot better. Dallas believes they're better. They're playing with a lot more energy. The quarterback's playing better. They're following this guy. So I think the Dallas Cowboys has gotten better. So when you're talking about that, I think when you look at this team, you say, what did they learn from these things and these losses and these mistakes? I think, yes, I think the Niners learned a lot. What did they do to show you that they learned? I'm going to tell you what they did. They understood earlier in those games you look at when they were losing, there's a lot of times they did not put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. They went on and said, we have to do something. Where'd they go? They got a rental. They went and rented Chase. They rented Chase and said, we got to go rent us a pass rusher, a guy that can play the run and play the pass, and let's go rent another pass in. Because Bosa was holding out, didn't really, hadn't played great as we used to seeing him play. So they said, we got to go help him. Yes, he was still making plays, but they could slide the line to him and double team him. Armstead wasn't necessarily doing what he wanted to do, been injured, battling through some injuries. So what did the Niners do? And that's what you have to commend John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan at the halfway point. They said, we're not good enough to win the Super Bowl. Let's just be honest and let's be real and let's put it right on the table, as Guru like to say. Yep. They were not good enough to win a Super Bowl, so they went and made changes and went and got additional. What did they do last year when this team, they said, hey, what are the Niners going to do? All the running backs are injured. What are they going to do? What did they go out and do? They went and got Christian McCaffrey. Think about what the Niners have done the last couple of years when they were right there in the thick of things and they said, how are we going to get over the hump? And what's going to make us be able to compete for a Super Bowl? Got Christian McCaffrey. The only thing that happened there was Purdy got hurt. So if you think about what the Niners did this year, they're like, okay, our defense, we got to get more pressure on the quarterback. We got to do other things. Our secondary can't necessarily hold up. We got to make something happen. What'd they do? They went out and addressed it. So what's the difference to me in these halfway points and what has been the biggest thing that's changed during this time? I think the Niners addressed what they needed to address to make them better. Each and every year they do that, and this year has been no exceptions.
And I think that's a really good point, which to me is also a product of the experience. Well, I mean, come on. Lorenzo Neal sitting here just spitting game. Every single pregame show, whether it's home, whether it's on the road, Lo Neal has got you locked in. My name is Evan Giddings. Larry Kruger, of course, has you handled for every single home game down at the Hilton Santa Clara. But this is to me, too, the product of your experience, because the 49ers, look, this is their 4th year that they have made the playoffs in their last 5. The only year they didn't was a year that was decimated by injury in the pandemic season. So they have learned from having multiple trips to the NFC title game, a trip to the Super Bowl, and understanding that, yes, their team is damn good without a Christian McCaffrey or without a Chase Young. But if you have the opportunity to go get those guys, well, then you're looking back at, well, how come you didn't win the Super Bowl? Well, at certain times, you weren't able to get as much pressure as you liked on Patrick Mahomes. He was able to dice you up. They had a running game that was more effective down the stretch. They had a more versatile set, potentially, of running backs. Raheem Mostert was really good, and he just scored his 20th scrimmage touchdown earlier against the Jets this year. He's a good running back, but if you can upgrade that position, if you can get better in that spot than they had at Elijah Mitchell last year, you go out and do that. Though Nick Bosa is a damn good defensive end, reigning defensive player of the year, Armstead and Hargrave, they have great defensive linemen.
They do.
But if you can add to that,
sure.
Well, then, I mean, why not? And that's where I do think that you're spot on about what they addressed or what they needed to get better at. But I also think it's a product of their failures and being willing to look in the mirror and say, that is what we need to go out and get. And this is how we're able to get it done. All right, we're going to step aside and take a break and be back on the other side with the conversation. I want to use this to dig into where Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch factor into all of this before the 49ers take on the Cardinals at 105 State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona, Week 15 in the NFL. This is the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURE or visit habaslaw.com. That's Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Gaines. We're back with more after this on 95.7 The Game.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. That's right. Get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but for 95% less. It's the same medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointment.
It wasn't about the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect of practice this week. That's what should have been preached. Look, we're going on a road trip. We're not going to be getting guys already in the mindset to play. You knew Hargraves was going to be out. You already knew a lot of these guys were going to be out. So how did the assistant coaches coach those backups? What were they doing? How are they getting them mentally ready to play this game, Arizona? Understanding what they're up against, because Arizona, they understand they want to play spoiler. They know they're not playing for anything, but these guys understand that after this year, a lot of these guys are going to be some other teams, so they have to perform because they're playing for other teams as well.
No, good point. And then, of course, for the 49ers, a couple of guys that were questionable that will be active. Charvarius Ward, who was nursing a groin injury, is active today. And Dre Greenlaw, who's dealing with a hip and ankle, also active for the 49ers, along with Aaron Banks. So they do have some impact players there. But, you're talking about Kyle Shanahan, and this is what we got into right before the break. This idea of what the 49ers have done from a roster construction perspective, being able to add through trades, being able to draft, being able to develop, and then potentially getting lucky with a guy like Brock Purdy, who has flourished and emerged now in his first season as a starter for the 49ers. All the stars seemingly have been aligned for this year with the 49ers. They have made now the playoffs or secured a playoff spot in 4 of the last 5 years, even though they haven't won a Super Bowl. And I think this is why a lot of people haven't maybe brought this up. And of course, the Chiefs have been, kind of the crown jewel of the NFL the last 5 seasons, really since Mahomes stepped into the league. But do the 49ers on the NFC side represent to you, Lo, a model of consistency, maybe even more so than someone like Philadelphia? Because even going back to 2019, even before Brock Purdy with Jimmy Garoppolo, they still had extremely successful seasons, even though they didn't get it done.
I think without a question, if you think about what the 49ers have done in the last 5 to 6 years, they've been consistent. And that's what you're alluding to. Even though Philadelphia, they won a Super Bowl, but have you saw the domination that you've seen with the Niners? The Niners, like you're talking about, they're one game from the NFC title. They went to the NFC title game. They go to a Super Bowl. They've been right there. They've been right there. They lose the Super Bowl, but they've been competing year in and year out. And that's because they have a system in place, but also that everyone else is following in line. The coach, the assistant coach, the GM, that's what they have. They have built a program for success. If you look at even the quarterback position, talked about Jimmy G, a game manager. Last year, the year before, you think about what this Niner team, we would say, how many times they got to run the ball? 40, 45. They need to run 40. Jimmy needs to have 220 yards or less. That's cool. If he gets 200 yards, they win. Think about the numbers and things that you were talking about with the 49ers. It was a physical team that would always probably wear down at the end of the year, but they did not have a lot of trust. It was Jimmy G, the game manager, and go run the ball and play good defense. Now you don't have that. So that just tells you that the system has been in place because they always have been competitive for the last 5 to 6 years since Shanahan has come in and got his roster where he needs it. That's why you have to like the system that they have in place and the guy that's leading them.
And I think a big part of this, too, because, you and I pay attention to teams throughout the league. We're discussing some of the ups and downs around the rest of the NFL. One thing that the 49ers have been able to do, and again, they have not won a Super Bowl yet, though I believe they are the favorites this season, and they should be. But one thing that also I think escapes a lot of people is when there's an expectation of greatness, it's not always easy to step to that bar or to even raise the bar. And the 49ers, I think, have done that. They obviously had a bar of success with Jimmy Garoppolo. Brock Purdy has taken that baton and ran with it in a northern direction. But we're looking around the NFL, and there's been firings, head coaches being let go left and right, primarily in the AFC. Quarterbacks are dropping like flies. 22% of snaps this year have been taken by backup quarterbacks around the NFL. And there's been teams that have not been able to simply step up to par, that have not played up to par. And so for me, another part of this too, why I think a lot of credit goes to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan is when you come into a season with an expectation of greatness, it's not always easy to meet that. And they've been able to do that consistently now for 4 of the last 5 years, as opposed to a team that you and I both know and love, a team that I believe has been the biggest disappointment in football, like the Los Angeles Chargers.
No question. That's because they have the right men on this team. You think about this. You think about what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch has done. What guy on this team do you hear that everyone says, oh, he's an ass or anything? They got the right character guys on this team. There's a guy that's making $5-6 million a year. Shouldn't be making that. And I love the position. I'm glad that they pay him. And that's Cal Juszczyk, the fullback. Mm-hmm. But why does the money is not because of the play. The money is because of his leadership. The money is because he shows them how to coach. The money is that he's a coach on the field. The money is because of what he is as leadership. The money is because of what he does in the locker room. The contract is because what he teaches other guys. The money is because he is a leader. That's why certain guys, you're like, why are they paying certain guys in this amount of money? Because it's another part of it that guys and coaches don't value. Cal Shanahan values the leadership. He values the intellect, and he understands the guys that he wants on this team, what they do for him. They make his job easier because a Cal Juszczyk is going to be like telling the running backs, no, we don't play like that. No, that's not acceptable. No, we're going to go watch film. You don't think that he's teaching and coaching guys. So when you have players that do that, you're paying for a player, but you also playing for a coach. You're playing for a player, but you're also playing for a mentor. You're paying for a player, but you're also playing for that leadership. So that's what Cal Shanahan and John Lynch has done. Those are those extra things that you don't necessarily see. And this is what you're saying. How are they able to do that? Why are this team still staying so consistent? Because the leadership and the men that they have in that locker room, and when other guys come in, they teach that culture.
Well, and I think also it's embodied by the amount of players that you'll see, for example, blocking beyond the play, or guys that are running down the field trying to catch up to McCaffrey on a big play like the first burst last week. So I think you see it on the field, but of course it has to start off the field. And that's where someone like, Deebo Samuel, like a big question I had coming into this season, Deebo's coming off a down year, was a bit banged up last year. He said the contract affected him. How does the money play into this? Nick Bosa got the biggest contract ever for a non-quarterback this offseason. How does the money affect you? And to this point, granted, winning is a big part of it. When you do it, it tends to solve most of your problems. But when you're not always being as productive as you've been accustomed to, like, for example, during a 3-game losing streak, we're pointing fingers at the DC. We're wondering why this guy's not doing this. We're wondering why this guy's not doing that. It never felt like the 49ers took what the media was creating around them to heart. And that's why I believe coming out of the bye, it was so easy for them to get back on track, because in a weird way, it was like, even though they lost those games and they didn't play up to par, they were never really off track. Like they felt like they were the team from the first 5 as opposed to the middle 3. And that's why I think we've seen them pretty much just, admit that was a blip on the radar.
They stay the course. And what you're saying is you're absolutely right. You think about when they had that losing streak, and then they try to say, well, get the defensive coordinator down on the field. None of the players, each man, they said it has nothing to do with him down on the field. The coach said, sure, I'll go down. It doesn't matter. No one wavered. No one bounced. No one blinked. They said, hey, we got to play better. The coach can't make the tackles. When you think about what they went through, all those men, they didn't go and let the media or anyone pull them and break them apart, that all the talking heads that were out here doing. All they did is say, we have to stay the course. We have to get better. We're the ones that's going to have to tackle better. We're going to have to get the right calls. We're going to have to do better. And they did that.
Yeah, and the 49ers have a chance to establish that, like, and this is part of it too. In order to have the consistency that they had, it all starts in the division. And the Cardinals are a team that are trying to find themselves. They're kind of at the beginning of a rebuild. They don't know what they're going to do at the end of the year as far as Kyler Murray is concerned. There's some speculation about potentially taking a quarterback and trying to build around that position. Jonathan Gannon's a first-year head coach there. But the Niners have a chance to win their 12th consecutive game against an NFC West division opponent. And that, I think, cannot be overstated enough. In order to win the division, you got to be able to go a consistent 4-2, 5-1 against those guys every year. And last year, undefeated. This year, they have a chance to go undefeated. Like, they have essentially placed themselves in a position to where they are the kings of the NFC West. And there's not a team right now that, if you look at the next, it's hard to look at 5 years down the road, but if you just take what has been Brock Purdy's contract the next 2 seasons, it's hard for me to envision a team like Los Angeles Seattle, or a team like they're playing today in Arizona, making up that much ground in the next couple of seasons. And so the 49ers are not, of course, positioned to play well this year and to make a deep run, but they're also positioning themselves to maintain a dominance and a stranglehold over a division for the next year or two.
Oh, without a doubt, and they're going to pay Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, what he's done, and you know that. He's outpaid his contract. Yes, he's got some bonuses where he made an extra $1 million and in incentives. He's probably making more, and stuff off the field with the endorsements. But the guy's underpaid. He's grossly underpaid. And what he's done, I think that Kyle Shanahan and this organization, they're going to pay him. They have to because it's the right thing to do. And so when you're talking about this team, they're staying ahead of the curve. They are. And even though they gave up so much draft capital, you're going to see them do something to get those drafts back. They'll do something in free agency. They understand what they need. They understand what the needs is of this team, and they're going to continue to develop this team. And you're right, because you have a quarterback that's on a rookie deal and he's so cheap, you still can be able to pay some of these guys. So the 49ers, I think just the way that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan is operating, they're doing a phenomenal job, even though you gave up a lot of draft capital for Trey Lance. But isn't it worth it if you win a Super Bowl this year? Isn't you worth it when you say, okay, God, we gave up all this for Trey, but now we just won a Super Bowl? What do you play? You play to win the game, and you play to win Super Bowls, and now you're in a situation where you're the leading team to win the NFL and win the Super Bowl, so you can't be mad because you gave up some draft capital.
Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal with you on 95.7 The Game. This is the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wrong, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. Less than an hour away from the 49ers and the Cardinals kicking off in Glendale. Brock Purdy's return to the desert. First time he's playing in front of his own family. In Arizona, the Cardinals are 3-10. The 49ers are 10-3. You know, you mentioned something about John Lynch, and I think that, look, I mean, anytime, and you know this better than anyone, Lo, I mean, when you got guys that have the experience at a high level in your front office, but also being close to your head coach and have that kind of relationship, someone like John Lynch, I always wonder how he feels about his standing with the 49ers, because I think he's able to fly under the radar just because of the consistency and sort of the, I don't know, professionalism that he brings to the role. But I do wonder how many people understand just how damn good of an executive this guy has been. And it doesn't look like, along the lines of, we're talking about Purdy and McCaffrey and those guys deflecting and not really wanting credit and giving it elsewhere. I feel like that also applies to John Lynch.
Yeah, John Lynch, you got to realize he's been around football, and he's had Kyle Shanahan when he was playing his latter days when he played with the Denver Broncos. So they got to talk. You imagine this guy, he was in his latter part of his career. He's playing with Denver Broncos. He goes over there from Tampa Bay, so he's with Kyle Shanahan. He understands that. So they get to talk about football IQ. John Lynch is a very studious guy at football, so he knows football. The guy's been around. He went to Stanford. He's a Stanford grad. Smart guy. Played baseball, too. I remember playing against and playing with John in college and playing with him in some of the bowl games. So I knew John, since college days. So here's a guy that's been around football. So you people are like, well, how is this guy going to be in and be a GM and just skip the ladder? Well, I think that you have to have a good relationship, and that's what he had with Kyle Shanahan. And now Kyle Shanahan's been teaching him along the ropes what he's looking for, what he wants. And so they go out and they do a good job. John Lynch is not lazy. He's a guy that's going to work at what he needs and work at his trade to make sure that he's the best. It's like he was one of the best football players and safeties on the field. This guy, he understands what's against him and what everyone's saying. So he's going to go out there and draft, and he's on the phone. He has Tony Dungy, all the different guys. John Lynch's Rolodex and the different people that we've been around and the people that we met. So you don't think he picks up phones, and now people won't pick up his call because they're like, dude, we can't teach you anymore because you're doing well. So I think that he's been in a good situation, and people want to help ex-ball players. People want to see those guys' success. Your coaches, he could put the phone on Parcells, Belichick. You saw Belichick and him did a trade for Jimmy G. So he has great relationships with these people.
And also, too, like when we talk about the few blemishes on his resume, and this is a big part of it too, I think, which speaks to the consistency and the balance in which they've had as a franchise. And, credit to Jed York, the owner, for, I think, evolving and allowing a Shanahan and a Lynch to do what they do best. But also
kudos to him.
Like you mentioned the name Trey Lance. And one of the big things to me about this season is the fact that name hasn't come up at all. And generally, when a front office whiffs on that kind of pick with the capital that they used to go get a guy like that, it's not something that people often can survive. And instead, the 49ers have not just, of course, survived it, but they've gotten better from it. But you had an interesting theory before the show. I thought about where Trey Lance is now in Dallas and how that might be pushing another quarterback in Dak Prescott. Like, I do think that Trey Lance's name is always going to be around the 49ers. There's no doubt. But when Dallas eventually, I think probably is going to meet the Niners in the playoffs at some point, that name's going to come up again. And it feels like indirectly he's had an impact on both quarterback rooms, not as a guy who's been
in a positive,
but in a positive way.
Oh, no question. I think that you got to realize, they say, well, how could he have a positive impact? You look at the Dallas Cowboys. Trey Lance was drafted there. He was traded. There was a trade. The Dallas Cowboys owner, of course, Jerry Jones. Yeah. Jerry Jones said, I don't know about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, I paid him the money, but I don't know. He liked Trey Lance. Trey Lance, a big arm, strong, big guy. He said, here's a guy that we can groom for a year and maybe plug in and play, because Dak Prescott was on his way out the door. You'd make that trade. Now, you look at Dak Prescott now. Dak Prescott, he's not stupid. He understands you hear the thunder before you see the lightning, tell you the rain is on its way, come out of the rain. And he said, I better pick up my game because I know they want this young fella to replace me. And look how that pushed Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott went from being almost out the door, that we're talking about maybe for MVP of the league, because of the fact you went out and brought in a Trey. So Trey Lance have had a positive impact on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys organization. Why? He's getting reps. Why? He's out there playing. Why? At practice, they're like, you don't think that Dak's watching him when they go backups and he's out there and getting some reps and, okay, this guy's okay. Iron sharpens iron. And that's what you do as an organization, as coaches. When you do that and bring in the right guys that can push certain guys and push certain buttons, that is going to have them say, look, I don't have to look. There's a guy behind me that I know that's pushing me. So when you have no one pushing you, sometimes it can make you be a little careless, not play as hard, not do the things you need to do because you know no one's pushing you. Now they have some in that organization that's waiting, and you know Trey wants to play. So I think this was a great move by Dallas because it pushed Dak Prescott to be better.
I mean, he's been the best version of himself to this point in his career.
It's his rookie year, running, scrambling, doing the stuff. Dak's looking way better because he's pushing it and he's taking a lot more chances, being way more efficient. But I think a lot has to do with the pressure that he's under.
And that's why I'm curious to see what they're going to do in the playoffs, and of course what the 49ers are going to do in the playoffs. Because if there's one thing that, and bringing it back to today, the 49ers have had some trouble with dual threat quarterbacks defensively. But on the offensive side of the football, really the only thing that I could maybe question at this point is the experience at the quarterback position. Now, Brock Purdy's got 2 wins under his belt. We don't know what would have happened if he had finished the game in Philadelphia last year. But at the end of the day, he is a first-year starting quarterback, and he does have less playoff experience. Now, Dak Prescott is a guy, along with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. These are guys that have played in 4 or more playoff games throughout their career, but they haven't had as much immediate success, or they've ran into a wall, or they ran into Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. These guys have beat up on each other. Dak Prescott in the NFC has had struggles in the past. So I do wonder how much that experience is going to come to the forefront once we get to the postseason. The 49ers are going to be involved. They've already punched their ticket for the 4th time in the last 5 years. But whether they're on the road, whether they're at home because they've secured the 1 seed, I do wonder how much experience factors in, because you've been in those trenches low. And as much as the regular season is a great indicator of your ceiling, you don't exactly know who you're going to be until you throw down in the playoffs. And the rest of the 49ers team has been there before.
Yeah.
But Brock Purdy still, I think, has to answer that bell a little bit.
Yeah, I like what you talked about earlier. You talked about how you called my guy the match, and then you said Brock Purdy's the fire, the gasoline. So I think when you think about the NFC, look at Pollard for the Dallas Cowboys. He's a fire.
Yeah.
You think about Philadelphia. The running back, lose me now. The running back,
DeAndre Swift. Yeah.
He's the fire. Think about the Niners. McCaffrey's fire. So you got to realize which one of those teams is going to ignite the fire first. You got to realize, so they all kind of have that pushing factor that they have to have that complimentary back. Dak has shown now that he's kind of doing it, but if you look at with these teams, they got to have that run. And I think that's all these teams, these three teams that are in the top of the NFC, they all can run the ball. They all can run the ball and they can be physical. And they all have good backs, and just McCaffrey has to be head and shoulders above them. So I think who has the best fire. And that's what I think when you talk about Purdy, to your point when you're saying hasn't had the experience, and I understand that. But what he has is he has a bigger fire starter. He has a guy that now he doesn't have to be, it's all on him. And I think that's the thing that you're alluding to. And you're talking about how will Purdy handle the playoffs and all those different things. He showed that he can handle it. But it's also been successful because he's had a guy in McCaffrey that has taken a lot of the load off of him. So if you continue to do that in the playoffs and leading forward, I think he's going to be fine. Yeah,
Prescott has weapons, there's no doubt. CeeDee's a solid receiver. You got a decent running back, good O-line. Philly also has great receivers on the outside. Dallas Goedert's a quality tight end. You got Swift in the backfield. But you're right. Like, the separator is McCaffrey.
Yes.
And I think Purdy probably has better weapons as a whole than either of those other two quarterbacks. But the one thing that always has impressed me about Purdy, and again, this goes back to my theory about wanting a boring quarterback, is he hits every layup. Like, he doesn't miss when you need him to. And even some of the deep balls, I mean, he was throwing over the heads last week of different guys, and he was taking on Seattle. They were trying to press up and force Brock Purdy to beat them down the field, and he did. So I just wonder, as a defense, when you're looking at this guy, and you have to be, of course, accountable for everyone else as far as the offense is concerned, if you try and take away McCaffrey, well, then Purdy's going to hurt you. If you try and take away a Debo or a Kittle, McCaffrey's going to hurt you. So you're really just picking your poison at this point, and that's why I think Brock Purdy has been so important to what the Niners do, maybe even more so than McCaffrey, in my opinion, is because he's the one that has to press the buttons. And I don't know if we give enough credit to a guy that is as close to, I don't want to say perfect, but he's hitting the majority of those balls and those open receivers. Now, a lot of quarterbacks can do that, but I don't know if they can do it at the rate that Purdy's been able to put this thing together.
Well, I think Purdy gets a lot of credit, man. I think everyone talks about him every week. You don't talk about Mahomes every week. No one's you don't look for a whole. I mean, think about all everyone does. They always want to talk about Purdy and the Niners. Okay, you got Mahomes, you got other quarterbacks, Lamar, all those guys, but Purdy is the most talked about quarterback to me in the league. Why? Is because of what he's doing and how well this team is. So people are always looking and saying, what's going on? What's this team up to? Why are they playing so well? And a lot of it has to do with Purdy. And you have to realize the biggest thing is with me is like, how do teams slow him down? What is some of the things they have to do? You saw what Philadelphia did early. They said, let's put 8 guys up on the box. Let's get after him. Let's hold it. Let's knock down balls. Let's go and get man-to-man and see if he can beat it. And he has a hard time because of the fact if they got pressure, if the offensive line's not blocking and doing the things they do, and that's how you try to get after Purdy. Make him, he's a rhythm quarterback. You want to make sure that he can get the ball out of his hands, and that's what they want to come after with the sack and try to put pressure him on one-on-one. So the offensive line, to me, Purdy, and that's any quarterback. But as the offensive line grows and continues to get better, I think Purdy is going to be fine because if he's got blocking and got time, he can carve you up.
Which is going to take us into our final segment before the 49ers take on the Cardinals at 1:05 State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona, Week 15 here in the NFL. This is the Kickoff Show. Next, I want to get into, of course, our predictions for the game, but also how the 49ers kind of slice up the pie chart of success. Who do you give the most credit to? Who gets the most credit in a game like today, in which they are down a couple of players, mainly on the defensive side of the ball? And I want to get into that side of the ball as well on the other side. So 888-957-9570 is the number. If you want to text in on the Comcast Business text line your predictions, I want to see you on YouTube. Appreciate you all chiming in here. Lorenzo Neal, Evan Giddings on the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURE or visit habaslaw.com. Our final segment on the Kickoff Show before the 49ers get going against the Cardinals. A chance to make it 12 straight wins against the NFC West. And on the other side, we're going to dig into that 49ers success pie chart right here on 95.7 The Game.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising! After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
It wasn't the internet, and it wasn't the warehouse club.
But?
It was video only. They had better deals on the Samsung, LG, and the Sony TVs that got the highest scores.
Better than online and at the club?
I know! Video only beat them all. And now we can afford an even better model for the same price. My research really paid off.
If we buy it video only.
Exactly. Otherwise, we'll be sorry.
At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves, but you will find the best deals on top-rated TVs, soundbars, and monitors. Shop around. Just make sure you visit Video Only, because if you don't,
you'll be sorry.
In Mountain View, San Mateo, Union City, Dublin, and San Rafael. Video Only.
Are you facing the daunting aftermath of a DUI arrest? Your life doesn't have to spiral out of control. Take action now and regain control of your future. I'm Nabil Ahmed, your trusted partner in the fight against DUI charges. I'm a dedicated DUI attorney that is ready to stand by your side, working tirelessly to protect your rights and your freedom. Don't let one mistake define your future. When the stakes are high, make the call that counts. Contact me at eastbaylawpractice.com. That's eastbaylawpractice.com.
It's that time again, Dub Nation. You hear the call. In this arena, every night we witness plays that make us go, did we just see that? Yeah, you did. When Warriors ground starts to buzz, brace yourself for the experience of a lifetime. Get tickets now at warriors.com.
This year, make the commitment for a better financial future. One of the easiest steps to financial freedom is learning the different but proven approaches to reach those goals. Visit therad.com today. That's THERAD.com to claim your free copy of the first chapter of New York Times bestselling book,
back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
All right, half hour away from kickoff. We're all the way up. All the way up on the 49ers.
There we go.
I mean, they're the 1 seed right now, trying to keep that spot as they take on the Cardinals at 105 here in Week 15 of the NFL. This is the Kickoff Show with Evan Giddings alongside Lorenzo Neal. It's something we're kicking this around during the break, Lo.
Yeah.
This concept of keeping your team as a head coach on track.
Sure.
And I think Kyle Shanahan doesn't get as much credit for that as maybe some people should, because the 49ers, even not just this year, but in previous years, always have gotten better once the month has turned to November, December, January. His record later in the year has been great. And just comparing it to some of the teams around the league, it's so evident that, of course, the 49ers are talented. Of course, they got studs all across the field. But it does take a leader, in a sense, to be able to galvanize and align that. And I think Kyle Shanahan does that in a fantastic form, as opposed to, for example, something we saw on Thursday night in Las Vegas.
Wow.
A team like the Chargers that clearly gave up on their head coach who now doesn't have a job.
Yeah, without a doubt, and that's you're absolutely right. You look at a guy like Shanahan, you look at a guy like Belichick. Belichick's a guy that everyone knows how tough he could be, but here's the thing, they're going to compete for him. He knows over time, these guys, you saw them, they find a way to beat teams. They still find a way to keep games close. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to do the things. When you saw Staley probably is one of the best defensive coordinators and knows defenses is just as good as anybody in the league. But why? What was the difference? Why did his guys quit? Why did his guys give up 49 in the first half against a Raiders team that the week before they couldn't even score, lost 6-0 or 3-0 to to a team in New England, to Minnesota?
Yeah.
What happened? What is the difference? And then the Raiders come out and score 60 because the Raiders kept fighting for their coach. They kept fighting because their jobs. They believe in the system. They believe in the man. So they fought. You saw Staley. Staley had a team to go out there and they just laid an egg. They didn't play. Got out there. They dropped 5 turnovers, fumbled, strip fumble, kickoff return, punt team, just fumbled. That's a lack of concentration. And that's a lack of not physically, but the mental. And that's what I'm talking about leading into today's game. The mental part of it. You're better than a team, and mentally you have to go out there and still be connected, because if you don't, that team that you're better than can make it a game because you let them jump on you. And that's what the Chargers, you saw that for Staley, and you're like, man, what is going on with Staley? Why aren't those guys playing the way that they're capable of playing at that high of a level? And you saw that on that other day. That's what Coach Kyle Shanahan has done a great job of. Kyle Shanahan has done a great job of getting his guys ready to play, but play with consistency and play with that bravado and that attitude that they need to play with in order to win and compete. That's what he's done year in and year out, and that's what makes this 49ers team dangerous, but that's what makes them consistent, is because their head coach, he's telling them and instilling within his assistant coaches to say, this is the standard. This is how we're going to play. Even when they went on that 3-game losing streak, you saw not only the consistency, but you saw that they still stayed not just consistent, but they competed. Even though they lost, they competed. They just didn't get rickrolled. That's what you know, that your team is, at least they're connected. Yeah, you're going to make some mistakes, but you see it meant something to them. When you're getting beat 50 and 60 and all those things and you just don't have a chance, it doesn't mean enough to you. And that's why you got to have a head coach that's going to be able to resonate with those guys in the right way.
And conversely, too, from a winning perspective, the 49ers have made a mockery of a lot of teams this year, but I think that also is where the alignment from the top also manifests itself on the field, because the 49ers have not had a game, to my recollection, and maybe Tampa Bay probably would be the best example of a game in which they didn't, step on the throat of an opponent, but even then, it was a 13, 14-point win. So the 49ers, when they have gotten an advantage, when they smell blood in the water, they have wholly grabbed that game by the reins. And I think so, you're talking about Yeah.
Seattle, they didn't really. They could have a chance to really kind of solidify that too, and just let them stick around. Yeah, just kind of let them stick around. I know what you're saying. I get it.
But I think it's also a tough task to do when, for example, like now this week, you already got your ticket punched to the postseason. It's just a question of where you're going to be seated, and you're going to be 1, 2, or 3. Likely, you would hope to be the number 1 seed, and I think that is also maybe the difference, kind of the minute difference between this season and years past is there is seemingly a workman-like checklist for this 49ers group, and there's 3 things that they have expressed publicly that they want, which is, number 1, a playoff berth. Check. Number 2, the 1 seed. They have a chance in the next, 4 games to secure that. And then the third, obviously, is hoisting a Lombardi trophy. So they're a third of the way done, and they have a chance today against the Cardinals to win their 12th straight game against a division opponent, effectively wrap up the NFC West for a second consecutive year, and establish themselves as being in a position to get what needs to get done, which is the only thing that Shanahan has not accomplished in his tenure so far, is winning a Super Bowl.
And that's why today I'm not worried. I know we talk about the letdown and trap game. That's why I'm not worried, because Shanahan has these guys ready to play. They understand. You're talking about check marks, playoffs, check. Now you have a chance to be the number 1 seed. They understand what's at stake. You think Fred Warner and Debo, and you talk about number 71, Trent and Ayuk and all these guys, and going to go out here and say, we're going to let this game get away. You could play with 10 and then find a way to win, because that's the way these guys are built. Shanahan's not going to, they understand what's at stake. They understand they got 1 check and they got 2 checks to go, but right now, 2 of the checks they're in control of.
Yeah.
They're in control of all 3 of the check marks. 1, you're in the playoffs, so you can check that. You can lose out and you're still in the playoffs. So that is unmutable. But you don't have control necessarily of the number 1 seed unless you continue to win. So I think that you're talking about that's the consistency. That's what other teams that I think separates the Niners, the grit and the gravitas that these guys have. But it starts again from the top, and that Shanahan making sure that what his message is permeates throughout that locker room, and the coaches, his assistant coaches, and his players, they get the message, and that's why they're out here trying to execute the plan. And today, they have to go out and they have to start fast, and they got to keep this quarterback in the pocket. Don't let him scramble around and beat you, because you do not want him to get confident. You do not want this team to get confident. And I'm telling you, look for this 49ers to come out fast, because they want to start fast, and don't give Arizona any hope.
Shout out to Paul on YouTube donating $5 to ask this question. It's a pretty big hypothetical. Should the 49ers have drafted Kirk Cousins instead of LaMichael James in 2012? I don't necessarily know if they should or shouldn't have. Kirk Cousins has obviously gone on to have a better career, but it points back to something you brought up, Lo, in the first hour of our show, which is how the 49ers have built this thing from, I don't want to say the bottom up, but to me they've identified, or Kyle Shanahan specifically, identified guys that are both productive as well as high character individuals. So you look at Kyle Juszczyk. Yes, he's probably making more than he should at this point in his career, but he's a foundational piece to the direction that Kyle Shanahan wanted to take this franchise. The first big trade acquisition after Jimmy Garoppolo, Trent Williams, looking to identify the trenches. Where do they spend the majority of their draft capital? First-round picks, the defensive line. So I think there's an institutional understanding from the top with Shanahan and John Lynch, which is to say, if we build the backbone of this franchise, well then, and when you get the arms, the legs, everything else that's extra, that's ancillary, those things can fit in and do their jobs without having to worry about the foundational core. And that's, to me, how the 49ers have been successful.
Oh, without a doubt. And you talk about should they have drafted, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins would have done fine here.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, he's Shanahan's type of guy. See what happened, what Shanahan loves, if you can get a guy that sells out to Shanahan and committed to where he wants you to go with the ball and committed to what he wants done, you can have huge success. And that's what Brock Purdy gets in there and says, okay, where should I go with the ball? Okay, if this happens. So Brock Purdy is a clone in his program. And that's what, if Kyle Shanahan, let me tell you, he's one of the best, if not the best offensive coordinator in this league. And when you have a guy, when you can say, if I'm going to be wrong, let me be wrong with Kyle Shanahan. If they're playing the bracket 2 coverage and I see that there's 2 and this is where they're going, Shanahan's going, this is what I've been prepared mentally because Shanahan's took me through that. That's what Brock Purdy has done. He's saying, okay, if this has happened, I'm getting this for this. where should I go next? And that's what he's done. He's made himself that computer that you can say, okay, they can only play so many different coverages. You can play 3, you can play 6, you can play 4, cover 8, all those different things. So all he's doing is saying, I'm looking here, this and that, then I go here, and then I have this check down. So once you have those fundamentals down, you can call it system quarterback, you can call it whatever. No, that is attention to detail. And a lot of quarterbacks, they want to wing it, and Mahomes, they do all this stuff and can do it. Yes, that's fine. But that's not who Purdy is. Purdy is not that type of quarterback that's going to go and do it. Now, can he do it? Yes. There's been times you've seen things breaking down. He throws it across the field, across where he shouldn't do it. But it happens when he has to. Only when he has to. But besides that, he is going to follow script, and that's what makes him elite, and that's what makes him great, because he understands the system that Kyle Shanahan has put in place.
Well, if we're talking about the system, how do you divvy up the pie chart for success? Because to me, I've gone back and forth on how much I give credit to Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, who obviously is in there, and to me, I kind of surround it like this, right? The defense to me is half the game. So, but I don't know if I'd necessarily slice up 50% of the pie chart for the defense. I think the offense is the tone setter for this group, and the defense, it allows them to play as well as they have, especially with the addition of Chase Young. So this is kind of how I would look at it. To me, 20%, whatever you give to Brock Purdy, I also think you do have to give to Kyle Shanahan, not just for his play calling, but also for the tone-setting type of mentality that we've discussed and the direction that he guides his franchise in as the head coach. To me, it's kind of 20% Purdy, 20% for Kyle Shanahan. It's 20% to me for the rest of the offensive weapons and the surrounding cast, primarily McCaffrey, and then 40% to me would go to the defense. That's how I would look to slice things up. But I wonder how people look at how the 49ers are constructed, because to me, they're so evenly built on both sides of the football that it's really hard to say which game is going to be which guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally agree and totally understand what you're saying. I believe that offense entertains, but defense wins championships. And when you think about when this defense is humming and they're in the backfield and they're creating a new line of scrimmage, it's tough, because then you just give the offense so many more opportunities. And that's when you're talking about Brock Purdy at his best, is at his finest hour, is because when the defense gets to 3 and out and all of a sudden the ball's moving and McCaffrey's moving, now it's getting to Debo, it's getting to Ayuk, and then you're talking about the gasoline is poured on the fire, and that's when he heats up. But it also comes by opportunity. So when the defense is humming and it's not letting offenses go on 7, 8, 12, 15 drives and sustaining drives and then scoring, then the Niners are 3 and out. It gives them more of a rhythm. If the defense, boom, 3 and out. Now the Niners get 3 and out. Okay, now the defense 3 and out. Now the offense goes 7 play. Okay, defense again 3 and out. Now the offense get 10 plays. That's when you see the rhythm that you're talking about, because that's when this offense is starting to cook and cook with Crisco, because of the fact that defense gives them more opportunities. That's when Purdy really starts to heat up, and that's when this offense really starts to flourish. So I think you got to look at offense. They're going to keep entertaining, but defense wins championships. And oh yeah, we can't forget about, what? I always say offense counts as a third, defense counts as a third, but special teams counts as a third, and it's big because it's field position. They're going to get 20 to 30 plays on special teams every single Sunday, so you have to be keen on your special teams as well.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons why they are considered the number one team in football, because of how complementary they play. To your point about the 3 phases, this is a game that is it's not necessarily difficult to predict as far as a result. I think the 49ers will cruise in this game against the Cardinals here coming up in about 15 minutes. But one thing that has impressed me so much about the 49ers this year is they got a lot of mouths to feed, not just on the offensive side, but defensive side too. And everyone is completely okay with the amount of credit that they receive on a game-in and game-out basis, or, for example, the amount of targets, the amount of touches that they get on a game-in and game-out basis. And you preach on this all the time, Lo, the fact that McCaffrey, for example, it's not about the rushes, but it's about the touches. It's about the passes, about what he receives, and everyone else feeds off of that. That's another reason why I think McCaffrey has been such a great leader, is because he's going to get his work, but he doesn't always fret about how many times he touches the ball, because he knows he's so important to the offense. Everyone else is, yes, secondary to him as far as who touches it, but whether he gets 20, whether he gets 30, all of it is concerned about the letter W. And that's where I think the 49ers today, why I believe they'll win, is because I don't know who's going to go off. It could be an Ayuk game. He's been a little bit quiet as of late. It could be a Kittle game, but it's always starting with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey, and everyone else has been so understanding of that you're never going to hear any sort of diva mentality from this team.
No, you won't. And that's the way they're built. You hear at times Ayuk doesn't even hardly touch the ball, but he's like, man, we won. Kittle, hey, diddle, Kittle down the middle. When this team first started, this was a tight end driven team. Mm-hmm. Kittle made this offense go. Think about when is he necessarily taking over a game. And I think you will see him win some games in the playoffs, and he's going to do what he does. But you don't need him to be. That's what I think is unique. When you watch Kansas City is not going to win a Super Bowl just with Kelsey and Mahomes. They do not have a receiver that can change the atmosphere and change the temperature. They do not have that. When you look at Brandon Ayuk and you look at Debo, those guys can absolutely take the roof off the building. They can give them a screen and they can take it to the house. And now you have Kittle that can do the same thing that Kelsey can do. He's probably faster. Not saying he's better, but when you look at this, that's what makes this Niner team so much more different and so much more prolific. You have the best quarterback in the league with Mahomes. Arguably, we know what he can do. But if you don't have a receiver that can do for what these guys can do for your quarterback, it's hard to win on a consistent basis. And that's why Kansas City has to chunk it and take chances and do those things. But it's more of a grind. The Niners offense is way more explosive because you have big play explosive guys. And that's what I don't think Kansas City has. And that's why when you talk about who's going to be that guy, you never know, because you can start lining this thing up today because of the receivers, and Kittle can go for 150, have over 100 yards. But you haven't had him have to do that because you have so many weapons and, like you said, so many mouths to feed. But because the quarterback and his ability to get the ball to everyone else and spread it, Brock Purdy understanding, hey, look, I know I got to get these guys. And that's what I think that we don't talk about, his feel of the game. Brock Purdy, feel of the game and feel of what he needs to do to keep everyone involved and engaged in the game. That's what I also think that is unique about his quarterbacking skills, is he understands that everyone wants to touch it. And you watch, this when Ayuk's not getting it, he goes to Ayuk. Just when other guys aren't being involved, he starts to make them all feel comfortable. He does a great job of focusing on the whole team, and that's why this team, to me, is the best team in the National Football League.
Yeah, and to your point about Brock Purdy, it's like we're going to a Brazilian steakhouse. Someone's eating ribeye, someone's eating New York, but at the end of the day, we all feel like we're eating filet mignon.
Exactly.
Like everyone feels like they're getting the best cut no matter what on a given day. And I think that's it's manifested itself in someone like Ayuk that's blocking 60 yards downfield. Right. McCaffrey, who's willing to stay in on third down, maybe not as a pass option, but can stand up a defensive lineman or get low and get into a player's grill. And so that they're able to play both physically, with finesse, explosively, and then on the defensive side of the ball too, when you got your president Fred Warner, who's out there at the podium, deflecting credit. He might be a defensive player of the year candidate this year, but you'd never know it the way he carries himself. He just goes about his business.
And then look at Jennings, man. Here's a guy that, like we talked about Purdy, but look at Jennings, how Jennings says, you know what, I'm gonna get this guy involved. And that's the thing. Even a guy that one of some of the lowest guys on a totem pole, they know their job. Jennings is in there, we know, to block. On third down, he's a big body. He's going to try to make a catch. But in the passing game, he's going to, in the run game, he's going to block his butt off, block his tail off, and he's rewarded. That's what they do great, and that's what I love about this team, is the team camaraderie. Like you said, at the end of the day, some guys are getting short steaks, some getting strip steaks, some getting an old piece of filet, some's getting the T-bone, some getting the ribeye. But at the end of the day, everyone feels like they're getting that caviar, baby, because they know they got a piece. And that's what makes this team, I think, tick, and that's what makes them talk.
Well, a couple of minutes left here in the kickoff show with Lorenzo Neal and Evan Giddings. If you got a prediction for the game today against the Cardinals, 49ers kicking off at 1:05, it's going to be on CBS, State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona. Brock Purdy's return to the desert. They've already beaten the Cardinals once this season, looking for a second consecutive sweep of a year. And of course, the Cardinals fell to the 49ers earlier this year, 35-16 at Levi Stadium. It was a 4-touchdown game for Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy, 20 of 21 in that game for 281 and a touchdown, completed 95% of his passes. I don't know if this game goes exactly the way that script went, but here, Lo, if we're thinking about predictions, to me, I think it's an automatic 30 points for the 49ers. Anything on top of that is probably gravy. But I would guess that the 49ers, with the way that they've also been able to punch in and finish off drives, this is a game to me that's probably looking 35-17. I'll give the Cardinals a couple touchdowns, but I think it follows a similar script to what we've seen, which is the 49ers jumping out to an early lead, and then taking care of business, because they have been the most suited and booted team in the NFL to this point this season. And I think a big reason why is because games like these are not considered trap games for them. They're more test games.
Yeah, they are test games, and I'm agreeing with you. I think this is a 30, 20, maybe, they might get 21, whatever. Yeah. But they still handle their business. They lead. They're going to be comfortable. But I think they're going to get after them. I think you're going to see a team that's going to get after them. I think that you're not going to play, especially when they get a lead. I don't think that you run McCaffrey in the dirt. I see you do a lot of mismatched things for him, run him on some decoys. You're going to have the receivers. I think Ayuk has a big game. I really believe Ayuk has a big game. I think Kittle, this is a game you have Kittle, because you got to realize what you're getting ready to do next week. You're going to play a very, very physical team next week. I think this is a week that you work on some things. I think you'll see a different type of Niner team today. Not that they're changing plays, but I think you'll see them take more risk. I think you'll see them gamble. I think they're going to confuse some things. I think they're going to check the integrity of Arizona's defense. I think you're going to get a lot of things that are going to be confusing. Look for them to do some razzle-dazzle. Look for other guys, young guys, that get involved. Look for some different things that the Niners are going to do, because I think that you're going to try to come out here and get Arizona all over the place. I think you're going to try to move around, try to jump on, get a quick lead, and continue to build on it. So I do look for the Niners to continue their dominance today, even though you have some big-time players that are not going to play today. I still think this is going to be a Niners win and a Niner victory.
Yeah, most notably Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, your two interior tackles, are going to be out for this game. Oren Burks out as well. Some good news on the defensive side. Dre Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward were questionable entering this game. They are active. So is Aaron Banks. But on the offensive line, missing Spencer Burford today for the 49ers. And then, of course, later tonight, you also get a look on Sunday Night Football at the team you're going to be playing on Christmas Day on Monday Night Football. And that is the Baltimore Ravens, who are at Jacksonville taking on the Jaguars. So a chance to get a little bit of a test here against the Cardinals, but then see what you got, the bigger test coming up next week against the Ravens.
Oh, no question, man. I know we got a couple minutes left, so I got to go ahead and do what I always do, is derail as I digress. And tell me right now, give me right now, who is your AFC? Who's the best team in AFC? I'd like to hear what you're thinking.
I do think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, because I think they have the most versatile defense. I don't necessarily trust Lamar Jackson as much as I trust, say, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, even, because I think those quarterbacks can put their teams on their shoulders. But the Ravens, to me, are the most complete team in the AFC, and that's why I like them.
And so where do you put the Bengals? Do you think with Brown they can still win? Do you throw the Bengals in there? If you were saying, hey, the AFC is going to be who? Give me your three teams that you think that could be in the Super Bowl. If you said, give me three teams that's in the Super Bowl of the AFC.
I would say Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo. Those are the three teams I think can make a run.
Yeah, I like those two. I think Buffalo is more interesting kind of to me. I think Buffalo's shown in the last couple of weeks, they've been battle tested. You played, went overtime, to a team that you could have beat, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. You see what they've been able to do. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You see Buffalo the last several weeks, I think they've been battle tested to show that Buffalo can play with anyone in the NFC as well as the AFC. So I think Buffalo is a team, in my opinion, if they win tonight, I would say Buffalo to me would be I was going to say they're going to be the best team, because I'm not sold on Miami. Why didn't you throw Miami in there when you see the way they've been playing? They're number one seed right now, or number two seed. Why not Buffalo?
Well, I think we got to talk about it in the next kickoff show, Lo, because we got to hit a break. But I'm with you, man.
No, we're just getting started, man. Overtime. I thought we were starting an overtime show. I thought we were going right overtime. What happened?
We will have overtime with Sterling Bennett immediately following the final whistle between the 49ers and the Cardinals. We know who the top three teams in the NFC are. It's the Eagles, it's the Cowboys, and, of course, your number one team in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers. About 10 minutes away from kickoff down in Arizona against the Cardinals. Brock Purdy's returned to the desert. He's going to be playing in front of the home crowd in Glendale State Farm Stadium. Lo, I love you as always, man. Appreciate you rocking with me.
You're the best, brother. I'll get that egg sounds for you next time.
My man. That'll do it for the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wrong, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. For Lorenzo Neal, my name is Evan Giddings. We'll talk to you after the game. Overtime, make sure to lock it in right here on 95.7 The Game. And also later tonight, the Golden State Warriors take on the Portland Trail Blazers. 5:15 Warriors live, of course. It's going to be a tip-off at 6 o'clock in Portland, so make sure we got you locked all day right here on 95.7 The Game.
Television sales on Black Friday set new records as millions of Americans snapped up the hot deals.